Hey everybody, Shawn Stapinski at the Habegger Corporation. I want to show you a little trick today just to kind of make sure your gauges are somewhat in the ballpark, right? You can always send your meters and your gauges out to get them calibrated, but you know, we deal with such critically charged units today. Sometimes you really got to watch and make sure, you know, you're as accurate as you can be. And I've worked on jobs where we've had gauges that were off, you know, I'm talking about refrigerant gauges, but you know, they've been off by 40 pounds or so. You know, that's kind of hard to dial in superheat subcooling if your gauge is off by 40 pounds. So a quick tip on one way you can just double check to make sure, you know, you're kind of in the ballpark is test them against a tank of refrigerant. So I like to do that with a brand new tank. In this example, this tank isn't new, but this is a known refrigerant, 410A tank. When you get a new tank, it's a little easier because, you know, you rip the label off and you got a new tank sitting there. But so what I've done is I took a tank here of 410A refrigerant, and all I did is take a K thermometer, something like this. I taped it onto the tank, and then I just measured that temperature. And you can see, well, I'll move that out of the way there. Tank temperature, surrounding tank temperature is about 70 degrees. So then all I got to do, pick up my gauge. In this example, I hooked up the low side over here. So then I'll turn the tank on, and then I can see the scale. See the pink scale in the center there? That's 410A, 70 degrees. And it looks to me like I'm almost spot on. 70 degree tank, 70 degree temperature that this gauge is reading is converted to the pressure. When I'm done with that, I can, take that back off. I can do the high side gauge and check it the exact same way, right? So if I'm checking the temperature to the temperature scale, then it's converted over to pressure. And you know, the gauge does that, or you do it with a PT chart or whatever. But you know, you could be off a little bit. I mean, all these gauges are, you know, off a little bit. But you know, if I went and looked at that and that said 70 and this tank is 70, and I go over here and it says 150, your gauge is way out of whack, isn't even in the ballpark. So every once in a while, not the worst idea to check and make sure your gauges, thermometers, thermometers you can test, ice water, something like that. But make sure you're in the ballpark. It'll help you get a lot closer to dialing some of these systems in. Hope you enjoyed that little tip. Stay tuned for more.